And our talk tonight is on synchronicity, that topic. So the reason that I thought it might be good to talk about this is because it seemed synchronous to talk about it for no particularly good reason. This came into mind as an interesting topic. We're going to look at the topic a little bit from a sort of Western point of view, and then also from the sort of classical Vajrayana Buddhist point of view, what it signifies. So first of all, it was interesting to note that you may know this, you may not know this, but the phrase came into usage initiated by Carl Jung, who was, of course, a famous Western psychiatrist. And I'm just going to read you the definition in Wikipedia, which is a pretty good one, I think. It says, synchronicity is the experience of two or more events that are apparently causally unrelated or unlikely to occur together by chance, yet are experienced as occurring together in a meaningful manner. The concept of synchronicity was first described in this terminology by Carl Jung, a Swiss psychologist in the 1920s. And here's a key point. The concept does not question or compete with the notion of causality, because we've been talking about karma quite a bit. So instead, it maintains that just as events may be grouped by cause, they may also be grouped by meaning. A grouping of events by meaning need not have an explanation in terms of cause and effect. So the definition that they're going there is that the meaning ties the events together. Somehow there's some signification to us that something happened over here and something happened over there, and we link it through our experience. So I know some of you, I'm willing to bet, you could say, that some of you have had experiences with synchronicity or have an interest in it. It's kind of a fascinating aspect of our world. Sometimes our world seems kind of random and just sort of like spooling, like thread spooling off a ball of yarn, like string coming off a ball of yarn, and just kind of random. And sometimes it seems somewhat synced up, but mixed with kind of random. And then sometimes it seems highly charged and synchronized, and with strong coincidences. Now, the first thing I wanted to say about it is that we're not just talking about positive. Everybody wants everything to be positive all the time. Could have a feeling of ominous synchronicity. Two things coming together in a way that, at least from the point of view of one's own, fragile perch, could be like coming to knock us off our perch and decrease our sense of stability. But the other approach is sometimes it has tremendous good fortune with it, or seemingly. So of course that would be related to how the meaning is felt and interpreted by us as individuals. The notion of tendrel in the Tibetan, tendrel means auspicious coincidence, and that's really what we're trying to get to in tonight's talk. So tendrel is Tendrel, which is auspicious coincidence, coincidence with a kind of sense of a good fortune attached, good outcome attached, positive opportunities coming with it. Like one of those, for example, could be, meeting a great teacher. That could be very auspicious. There's a great story that Sakyong Mipam tells in his book Ruling Your World, that some of you might know this, but my teacher Trungpa Rinpoche had Allen Ginsberg was one of his students also, and this would be an example of tendril. They both were in New York City at the same day, in the same time, in the same place, and were trying to hail the same taxi. And that's how they met. And then they had a lifelong relationship as teacher and student and collaborators on the poetics at Naropa University. So that, for example, could be thought of as a pretty amazing, if you think about it. It's got a very positive outcome. All of a sudden you're bumping into somebody, and then it has tremendous repercussions. If you think about it, probably every boyfriend or girlfriend you ever met had some tendril in it. And how you just happen to bump into that person, and there just seems to be a lot of resonance frequencies and a lot of kind of higher energy level of, wow, I have to follow through on this. But at first it appears as an accident. So the notion of tendril is very important in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. You could say it's kind of laced with that, and particularly in relation to, as in the story of Allen Ginsberg and Trungpa Rinpoche, of meeting with one's teacher, and some level of coincidence in terms of, you could say, bumping into that person. So what we say about it in the Tantric Vajrayana tradition is that the guru, or the sort of adept, the master, has the capability of magnetizing coincidence at a certain level of kind of mastery of the meditative practices and understanding, that the guru can actually seemingly create or ride on waves of coincidence. And if you've been around any great teacher in this particular kind of lineage, you might have experienced that, and maybe some of you can write in as we get into that discussion part and sort of share some thoughts about it. Aside from the Allen Ginsberg story, which is sort of the auspicious bump story, I wanted to talk about the idea of being around great master and having the uncanny feeling that they're almost controlling the situation or the environment, but at least riding on the energy of synchronicity and coincidence, and very much comfortable with it, and in a sense mastering it. So just one thought that came to mind, and this is more of the notion of synchronizing, other than some real unexpected situation. It's more just how lined up things can get. Khyentse Rinpoche, who was, as some of you know, Trungpa Rinpoche's teacher, and the Dalai Lama's, one of the Dalai Lama's teachers, and was thought of as one of the great masters. I call him the old blues masters. He was the generation that was actually still raised in the last generation of gurus raised in Tibet under the Tulku system in Tibet. At the funeral of Trungpa Rinpoche, all the great lamas gathered, or quite a few, and it was quite a powerful environment. And Khyentse Rinpoche presided over the gathering. And I think I've spoken about this before, but there was an attempt to, communicate with the students of Trungpa Rinpoche and help us sort of understand the coming and going of our teacher, and some of the significance of that. So sometimes you read books. If you read the book Born in Tibet, you'll read about stories that when a particular teacher was born, or something like that, the weather, like it might have been the middle of the winter, but wildflowers bloomed, or a pail of water mysteriously turned into milk, or that kind of thing. So, you can say these things were, primitive perceptions of reality from, pre-industrial people. But in my personal experience, that doesn't completely cover it, you could say. So at this particular event, Kensei Rinpoche, who was a giant of a man, he was like 6'7", and he was quite old already at this point, probably into his 80s, early 80s. And so he was a little bit bent over, and he would walk with a monk under each arm, or one of us, and kind of, it was really quite powerful and funny to see. He came out, we had a big tent outside at Carmachilli in Vermont, and he came outside to talk to the students and preside over a piece of the ceremony. And the weather was really, really fickle during the whole weekend. And he came out, and it was clear, there were clouds overhead, and he sat down in this tent, and then he gave a talk, and then he started to do this particular ceremony, and it started to rain. So that's not really a very big deal. But then it started to really rain, and it was kind of bordering on bizarre, to tell you the truth, how hard it rained. So some of the students in Kasun were having to take the sides of the tent, like that, and they were starting to just fill with water, and it would have caved in the whole tent. It was a little bit like some of the weather we've been seeing lately, but this was out in the middle of a field and in the middle of a kind of relatively calm day. It wasn't like a huge hurricane was coming or anything like that. But they would take brooms and push them up against the sides of the tent so the water wouldn't gather too much and develop too much weight. And it got deafening, it was like a deafening roar, and he was doing these mantras and recitations during this. And then, he finished, and he paused for a minute, and he got up, and it just stopped raining, just like dead stop, So, of course, these things happen. There's timing of the weather, and there's the timing of his. But the point is that they lined up perfectly in this way, and he just went off, and then it was very clear, So this is a little bit more in the sort of what we would think of as a sort of, from a conventional point of view, slightly magical quality to tendrel, and the positive auspiciousness, the kind of extreme synchronized quality that we can observe sometimes when things are really lined up, and really, really tuned. It's almost as if nature is agreeing, So, and certainly the human world can line up. So the point is that this kind of quality, if we're looking for it, we can't find it. If we want magic, we actually can't find magic. So there's a kind of way to, let's say, bump up the odds. And it's also the way we practice anyhow. So, but before I get into that, I see a lot of new people, so I just want to say, if you've just joined in recently and you don't know the drill here, you should just go to your browser and go to a second window in your browser, facebook.com/David Nichtern, and then you'll see the scroll of comments and questions to participate. So hopefully everybody's seeing me okay and hearing me okay. One never knows in this genre, but it looks like we're doing okay. And I see everybody. Catherine Bent, I found the right date at the right time. Yeah, that's... I guess sort of that's what we're talking about. So that's kind of, I don't know if you're trying to be funny, Catherine, but that is funny. And Casey Luber is saying, my Ustream ads are always in Spanish. Coincidence? I think we're going to have some fun tonight. There's Jello. Hi, Jello. Room in your fridge for some Jello. Definitely. Absolutely always. So it looks like we're all here and hearing okay. So we'll continue on. The notion of what can we do? What is the point on a sort of more mundane level or more day-to-day level, rather than waiting around for some kind of magic, which some of us get caught in that kind of approach. It's like I guess you could say it's the lottery approach to life. If you just keep buying tickets, sooner or later one of them is going to hit. But kind of, in my experience, it never happens quite that way. So we want to get away from the wish and a prayer school of meditation towards the what should I do while I'm waiting for the rainbow to come out? It's very nice when the rainbow comes out just when you're falling in love and that kind of thing, and you're up on the mountain peak with your new boyfriend or girlfriend, and behind you a rainbow comes out. Those are great, but what about in the meantime? What should we be doing? And from the Buddhist point of view, we are always talking about aligning or synchronizing, and Trungpa Rinpoche uses that word a lot, mind and body, and you could say in speech also, or our emotional body. So this is what we could be doing. You could say, I was almost going to say should be, but I don't want to say that. Excuse me. We could be doing most or all of the time that we can remember to do that. And it's as simple as the technique as applying the essence of the mindfulness training that we get from the technique of the shamatha meditation, of coming out of our asynchronous mode, which is where our thoughts are one place and our body is another place, and our speech might even be a third place. So we're actually, talking on the phone to one person and doing our email and kind of looking out the window to see what the weather is like, and walking around the room and tripping over the edge of the carpet, and kind of fumbling through reality, you could say. And I don't know about you, but I spent a fair amount of time. I would say it's a fair assessment of the relationship to the physical world and the mind being aligned. But when we're practicing and we've cultivated our practice, and when we have the fruition of our practice, the fruit of that is the mind and the body being synchronized. And that is the essence of mindfulness practice. And that is what we want to be doing as much as possible. I would say in this lifetime, for the people here with us now that we're talking to, we want to be putting that into practice as often as possible. And even thinking of it as a antidote, medicine, for a lot of the anxiety, stress, malaise, depression. Even think of it as this is the pill we want to take to clarify our own minds, even in difficult and troubling times, or if we, get to feel disappointed or disillusioned or cynical about any situation. We could, instead of dwelling there, we could kind of realign our awareness with the present moment. And this is the magic, this is the beginning of the magic of transformation. And it's also the beginning of a road that leads towards, obviously if you cultivate that, you have more of that, and the mind and the body are more synchronized. And you can do that with, obviously, yoga and Tai Chi and tennis and cooking and any, we've talked about this endlessly, that mindfulness can be a useful tool for any particular type of activity, including listening to a talk. You can bring your attention back to it, or your attention can wander. So we look at this kind of focus, this kind of clarity as a good thing. Maybe something missing in our not being actively cultivated so much in our ADD culture, which I think is almost worthy of being called that now. The United States of ADD. It's going to get maybe a little bit more intense as we go here and we go into this highly technical age, there's a lot of things grabbing attention, and not all of them require so much physical awareness, It's very mental. So the counterpoint for that, as far as we're concerned, is the practice of meditation and the physical practices of bringing mind and body into alignment. And almost like as if you were tuning a radio or TV set to actually get onto the channel. It's called the now channel. We're tuning in when we practice meditation to the now channel and now TV. So when you do that and you bring your attention and focus together and bring it into the physical situation and synchronize it with the breathing or with the sense perceptions in the kind of present tense, in the present time, there's this sort of immediate clarification that happens. Some of us might just experience that for a fleeting moment. But I think most of the students that I've been working with, almost to a person, are saying that over time, as they practice, in a kind of fairly regular way, that quality is creeping into their daily life. It's been an interesting kind of science experiment for me to hear back, because people could be saying, this is just not working, I'm not getting anywhere with this. But if I had one consistent comment from students, it would be that even though it's challenging to practice mindfulness in a very pure way with the mind and the breath, that it's actually incredibly helpful over time, So I think that's important to continue to emphasize. Is, of course, when we do our meditation practice, sometimes we have a lot of upheavals and it seems like nothing's going anywhere and nobody's getting anything from anything. But the notion of when you bring together, mind and body, there's just on that spot, not with a sort of permanent, ongoing implication. On that spot, there's a sense of clarity, for that moment. So that's the technique. It's kind of smelling salts for ADD. Meditation is a smelling salt for ADD. Assuming that somebody has the presence of mind even to practice in the first place. So that would have to be a prerequisite, is that you understand the concept of it. So that's why when we're teaching meditation, we talk about the view quite a bit at first, rather than just, why don't you just try this, If you understand the concept of bringing your mind and body together using some kind of focused objective awareness, and that can clarify and strengthen and stabilize the mind, which is habituated to kind of roaming around and kind of driving itself crazy. I would say, we have examples when we talk about these things of some of the meditators who say, well, my problem is that somebody else is driving me crazy. Maybe your mother or father, or maybe you're in prison or something like that, or whatever. And of course that can happen, but most of us, I think, would say we're driving ourselves crazy, which is a strange thing to do. If you catch my meaning, it's not really a healthy thing to do, And then we also see that we can kind of attenuate that by working in a deliberate way and a steady, ongoing way with bringing our attention back to the present. That we actually can create a kind of ground of more focus and more presence. And the thing we're talking about today is that it can even go further than that, to the point where, let's say, now you're getting a very clear signal on the radio, and there's a feeling of wakefulness and you could say being on point. And of course this comes and goes, and of course the more you practice, the more it's going to come. Otherwise, what's the point? And ultimately, through practice, one in this tradition, it could be a very long journey, but the idea is sort of stabilizing present awareness is the final fruition of the Buddhist path. And I don't mean glomming onto it. I mean stabilizing it so that there's nothing to hold onto and nothing to let go of. and there's a sense of presence that has unobstructed quality. It's not particularly, whatever arises is workable in that kind of situation. So in a way, you can say this kind of notion of developing mindfulness and awareness is more important, you see, than attaching to some notion of magic and coincidence and auspiciousness. But what we would say is that as you do that, in some sense you move into the arena, you could say, of tendrel, of auspicious coincidence, because it's just the nature of reality, actually. So sometimes these things, I noticed when I started thinking about this week, it's been on my mind for 2 weeks for some reason. I couldn't even tell you why. Maybe it's because I have to come up with some topic every 2 weeks, and we've covered quite a few of them already. But that's okay. The Dharma goes round and round, and we can talk about these things over and over again and get maybe some new meaning from time to time. But for 2 weeks, I thought about talking about synchronicity. I just wrote it down. It came into my mind. So this notion of tendril, can be very small deal. And simple example, Saturday night I taught a workshop in Wilmington, Delaware this weekend. Maybe some of you who are listening were there. And the Saturday night we had a little gathering at the household, had some friends over, and I noticed 3 or 4 times the person I was talking to would say a word like synchronicity, and then I would hear it just out of my ear. I have, that kind of musician hearing, so this is sometimes how I tap in. Across the room, you just hear, synchronicity, like within 3 or 4 seconds of it. Have you ever had that happen? I have a feeling that might be a familiar phenomenon. But if you're not awake, if you're not like kind of aware, those things go by unnoticed. So that's another whole issue, is waking up to notice what is happening. And then in the original meaning of the word coincidence is coincidence. Things are happening at the same time. That conversation's happening in the same room at the same time. That we underestimate the amount of connectivity that's happening and the amount of interdependence that's happening, because we're kind of blocked a lot of the time and isolated from it. So that could be just a little flicker of synchronicity. Sometimes it's much bigger things, and then sometimes it's a kind of very large scale and auspicious and magical feeling to it. So I had, this time maybe just a few thoughts that I wanted to share on this topic, but it's kind of one that's fun to talk about together. I have one more thing to hook us up with, and then maybe we can start to chat about this. So, notion of time and mind. And I think what happens here is that the Buddhist teachings and modern physics and science are starting to come very, very close together, at times. And there's a kind of interesting dialogue, obviously, going on now between the Buddhists and the scientists. Colleen, you can't get on in Ojai? You just have to click on the link. Go to the Facebook page and you'll see the link. Donnie Sarlin. Wow, great guitar player. That's always fun. Yeah, some wonderful people here. Good to see you all. Mike Henderson. Oops, I'm late. You're not synchronized, Mike. Okay. So I'll get to the questions in a minute. I see some of you have lobbed them in, and I promise we'll get to them. But I just wanted to add this one idea for food for thought or non-thought. I guess that would be the title of our book that we're working on, Food for Non-Thought. Um, time, is a very interesting thing, as you know. But I'll tell you personally, of course, there's, different views of this. In my own personal experience, just to make it very grounded, the experience of time is 100% related to the movement of mind, thoughts, as to how you experience time. And then arguably you could say it's also related to the movement of physical reality. So even if you're sitting still and not really, the mind is very open and clear, maybe the body is still going to age, relatively speaking. But for most of us, the race it's a race. Life is a race against time, or else we're dulled out. I'm talking about if we're not dulled out, kind of spaced out, and living in this world, we're going. The clock is ticking, and there's probably for many of us a feeling the clock. There was an old show before most of your time called "Beat the Clock," and you had a certain amount of time to get an answer. So that idea has been used. And then they would say at the end, "I'm sorry, you didn't beat the clock. The clock beat you." And I think most of us would feel that the clock is beating us. The older you get, the more you feel like the clock has beaten you and is in picking up the pace of that. However, in many of the spiritual traditions, the idea of sort of clearing the mind from like hyper-discursiveness has the experiential level of feeling time, the flow of time change. Even to the extent of, in some traditions, in the shamanistic traditions and so forth, and other traditions, stopping time or, kind of holding very steady in a non-conceptual way, non-conceptual awareness. And then the experience of time is different. I think everybody has some experience of this, I hope, that I'm not just, moving wind around here. So the one thing is we are so used to, particularly in our culture, we have to, it's not to spank ourselves, but particularly in our culture, we're so used to the thickness of thought and the hyperdensity of the thinking mind and conceptual mind, and also thinking that is what's real. And that's a lot of our scientific orientation comes from the notion that is what's real. What we think is what's real. What we're taught to think. We're taught to think clearly, which means we have a clearer handle on what's real. Or if we are taught to think in a distorted way, then our perception of reality is distorted. But we're rarely taught that there's space between thoughts and that the mind is not completely contained by the thinking or conceptual mind. Even you could say it's a rather small part of our consciousness. And there's a lot of science that's sort of talking about that these days. We think there's a kind of little driver, somebody who's controlling this whole outfit called me, and it's psychologically it's been shown to be at least a corporation or at least a board of directors. When we move into non-conceptual awareness, even just the sense perceptions, really looking like, or if you hear a beautiful piece of music, or you see lightning or hear thunder, our sense of time shifts by becoming less conceptual and less caught up in the storyline. So, as we've talked about before in our meditation practice, we can't just try to freeze time. That's not what we're talking about. And we can't grasp at non-conceptual mind, because the only thing that would try to grasp non-conceptual mind is what? Conceptual mind. So it's like thoughts can't really grab non-thoughts and freeze them. But gradually, when you practice, there's a sense of just openness, and not having to fill it all the time. Just relaxing the mind. That's very good. If you don't hold on to it, that's a very good way to meditate. Just to open the sense perceptions, see what's around, even just feel the breath going in and out. and let go of the tremendous compulsion to keep track of everything without spacing out. So that's the instruction, is just to relax and open the mind, but not sort of space out and not fabricate some other kind of version of reality. So this is, if at first our mind is completely crowded, we obviously have to begin to sort through the rubble and work through it and find the meaningful thoughts, and maybe recognize that we're caught in some very strong habitual recycling kind of thoughts. But as we get a taste, of the non-conceptual mind, the awareness itself, simple awareness, natural awareness, and if we can relax more into that, it's a tremendous sense of opening there. We're not used to it, so we're going to kind of maybe run from that, try to create something else, some big story, some drama. But it's amazing when you meet great meditators how open and clear and present their mind is. And it's also kind of friendly, weirdly. I don't know why that is, but somehow there's not a sense of cold clarity. It's kind of warm, open, human feeling. So not sterile, So, of course, if we don't practice, these things become very, very theoretical and fun to talk about anyhow, but it's not exactly the drift of our group here, where everybody's going home during the week and doing some meditation and living their life in a mindful, wakeful way as much as possible. And then we can explore these things together and see how they can influence the world in a positive way, in terms of more awareness and more compassion in the flow of daily life, which is what we're after here. So those are a few points. I hope some of that makes sense to somebody somewhere. Maybe at this point, I'll say again that you could go to begin to work. If you're getting the video and audio okay, you could go to facebook.com/DavidNicktern, and you'll see this stream of dialogues going on, and you can type in at the bottom your comment or question. We also have about 10 slots down there, a link that will give you a view of the whole flow of comments. You can work from there. So you can also feel free to relate to, as we said in the past, relate to somebody else's comments or questions if you like. So I'm going to see where we can pick up on a few of these comments and questions. Seth, could you also post, if you use Firefox, you don't have to get those darn commercials. So Seth, maybe if you're there, could you post the link? There's a way to use Firefox. You can't do it on Safari, but you can do it on Firefox, and actually it doesn't play the commercials anymore. Okay, so we have you guys are the greatest, I'm telling you. Okay, so yeah, Sharon's saying, can't any moment be one of synchronicity? It depends what you do with it. Any moment is full of potential. It's how we make the connections with things in that moment, I think. Well, that's spot on. I think that's exactly right, Sharon. That's the notion is that it's there already, and the quality of our attention and our focus is what kind of allows us to interface with this kind of synchronized quality. So that's exactly right. I think that's a good comment. Shayna saying it's good to be here now. That's sweet. Jan from New Jersey just joined in. The clocks are running slower here in New Jersey. I knew we were going to get some playful comments out of this. Denny. Hello, everyone. I'm Denny from Denton, Texas. Nice, Denny. Good to see you. All right, let's see. Monica is saying, I like the United States of ADD. My car electronics, clock radio, plug-in for MP3, audiobooks died last week. I commute up to 4 hours a day to work, and I immediately thought I would die without my distraction, trapped in the car and traffic. But a week into this torture, I realized I was really loving the boredom and quiet. Monkey mind was getting a little quieter. Skipped the appointment to fix it this weekend. Funny how even obsessively checking the time takes us out of the present and into some abstract world. Well, this is great. Absolutely. Marcia, hello from Italy. Great. Glad you made it. Okay, Sharon, let's just go in order here. How is noticing coincidences and synchronicity any different than creating storylines about reality? Sharon adds, oh, question. That was a question from David. David and Sharon are a couple, so or two friends that are watching together. Sharon adds, I have a friend who thinks everything she finds during a walk has special meaning, just for her, for example. It could drive one crazy, no? If there is everything, everything is speaking to them. I'm not sure exactly. That looks like a typo. Yeah, if there, everything is speaking to them. Oh, I see. If there, everything is speaking to them. Yeah, so of course, this is a beautiful, subtle little aspect, is that any aspect of, you could say, the more realized or more awakened parts of our awareness can be subsumed, can be kidnapped into the conceptual mind. And you see this is almost inevitable, you could say, for a practitioner to start feeling like they're getting somewhere. Or that the world is really magic and synchronous. And as soon as the answer is, as soon as we start dwelling on it in any way or fixating on it in any way, it becomes part of what it is that we're seeking to undo. So at the end of the day, there's a sort of funny twist of like you can't really do what we're talking about. You can't do it. And as long as there's a sort of sense of central headquarters and somebody refining this whole process and putting the Dharma concepts together, and they've mastered all the Four Noble Truths. And so that's why we have this notion of shunyata, or emptiness. And in the Heart Sutra, which there's been a talk on that, Buddha, after he gives all these teachings for years and years, and says basically there is no no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. So, and no wisdom, and no attainment, and no non-attainment. So it's just, then for a while you work at undoing all that, and then, I don't know, maybe at a certain point we just get run out of tricks, and that's where we come into the notion, in the kind of Shambhala teachings of basic goodness. It was there all along. It's not something we have to fabricate. So when we acknowledge the fact that the awakened state of mind is already here, and these other things that we do, even trying to recognize it, is one of the ornaments of it, and trying to get away from it is one of the ornaments of it. It's kind of hard to say this in words, but at that point you could say the teachings take a very experiential form, rather than so much verbal. And they call it pointing out, transmission. There's some quality in us already that it knows this, you see, and without that it would be impossible to discover it. So it's not an injection from somebody else, it's just a kind of reminder. And so, of course our friends can be annoying with what they do, but they're good, right? I'm sure your friend who's wandering in the forest is still a good person, and she's having some kind of good experience there, anyhow. So, Mary Rose, auspicious coincidence is something that can happen as a result of aligning ourselves with the simple awareness of the present moment. Is this also saying that the notion of time becomes not so fixed as we normally perceive it, or time-space categories change with the transformation of the mind through meditation practice? Well, Mary Rose, there's no doubt that that is spoken about, Like, for example, the Karmapa, who's the head of the Kagyu lineage, is, in some of the chances, is the knower of the 3 times. Omniscient Karmapa. Well, that's a pretty big time to say a human being can be omniscient, you know. But there's a sense of past, present, and future, you could say, colliding in the present. And if you even want to be, just kind of scientific about it, our notion of the past is always in the present. Wouldn't you say? If we're reconstructing the past or having memories of the past, that is an event just from event horizon that's occurring in the present. And if we're contemplating the future and worrying about the future, that event horizon is also in the present. So that's good science there. So Lottie, enjoying your talk. My life has had a lot of synchronicity at the moment. Okay, I thought somebody was going to say so. I experienced an urge to do something which seemed to come from outside of myself. Oh, okay, now we're getting into something here. And now I'm seeing connections to my practice and to challenging my fears. Yeah, let's see what other people say. That's really, I think, maybe a lot of people are feeling, at least that I talked to, that 2012 got amped up in this particular area. Not always in a pleasant way. Speaking personally, I would say definitely at times not in a pleasant way, but the notion of really having to deal with stuff. And it's just being brought to a head, the notion of karma coming to a head, karma fruition. So, and definitely if you practice, there's no doubt about it that one of the outcomes of practice is karmic fruition coming more and faster. So that's not always like comfortable, you see. And this is why I try so hard to debunk the idea of we're just practicing to stay in a comfort zone or to increase the size of the comfort zone. We're practicing to shrink the size of our comfort zone and therefore become more genuinely comfortable. Because if you can only be comfortable on a piece of territory the size of an M&M, you're basically not a comfortable person. But if you can shrink the size of the comfort zone so that you get more used to being at ease, you could say, with impermanence, with uncertainty, with openness, then you're going to be genuinely comfortable. That's true. I mean, think about it. That's true. So Kim is saying, my commercial cut when you were talking about Beat the Clock, and it was a makeup commercial with a big clock. Hey, here we go. Yay. Synchronicity. Here comes Sting singing the song. Thought somebody was going to say that. Although it was about the makeup being long-lasting, more like wearing out the clock. That's great. That's really good. Denny, sometimes I feel like the clock is beating me. Yeah. My life is revolved around school, school, and school. I hardly have time to myself, as if I can own time. Ha ha. That's funny. Sometimes it is overwhelming. More paranoia, anxiety, etc., and less calm. I need more calm. Well, Denny, I hope you can somehow get your way towards having, and this is what's wrong with the schools, there should be meditation or some kind of contemplative practice as part of it so that we don't just burn people through with knowledge, but some kind of space or openness in which you can explore a little bit more freely. But I would say anyhow, just person to person, that's an intense period of time, but it's not always going to be like that. And school is kind of like that, especially here. So good luck with that, and I'm sure that will shift when you finish that intense course of study. But we all have to allow some way to create some space for ourselves in a very crowded world. And honestly, it may not be the only way, but meditation and contemplative practice seems to be like the antidote for modern living, as far as I'm concerned. It's very appropriate now. Even, Danny, just even during the day, just put a little bell. Get yourself one of these. And pause for the amount of time that it takes for the bell to ring out and ring through. Do that 10 times a day. Total of 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Just allow your mind to settle, and then go back to what you're doing. So that is like a potential meditation idea for you, a way to practice, even in the midst of that situation. Just ring the bell, pause, listen to it for the full duration of the bell, and then resume what you're doing. Marie, one day I was talking to a friend who is fairly psychic. Yeah, I mean, these days there are people who are fairly psychic and medium psychic and very psychic. I don't know, either it's a more acceptable thing to be, or people are getting more psychic. That's what I would say. She told me there was a job out there for you. For me? Well, call me up and tell me what it is. I guess you mean you, but that's okay. I'd been thinking about going back to work, so I put my resume together and began to look on the internet. One day I called an old contact, and she had a job at a convent, which I applied for and got. Well, does that mean you became a nun, Marie? It is very quiet. It is a very quiet, prayer-centered environment where most of my interaction with the sisters are happy and joyful. What a gift! How fantastic! Well, see, this is more in the tendrel area, of something moving towards a positive outcome for you, and I think that sounds really wonderful. So I have to see what comes next, Marianne is saying, I find that where there is love, there is great synchronicity. Oh, that's an interesting add-on. Where there is love, synchronicity increases. Yeah. Pieta, coincidence is interesting, but not necessarily special. No, not necessarily. Agreed. In the notion of tendrel, it is a little bit special. In the sense of the word auspicious, having meaning, having potential. Maybe you could even say deeper meaning. But just the notion of coincidence itself is not. It can be very ordinary. So I agree with that. It could be both or either. If you see the ABP sign there, Seth has posted the way to get rid of the commercials, which works for more than just what we're doing here. Susan Comfort, I've recently experienced a traumatic loss, and I found distractions somewhat comforting. During my yoga practice, I've had flashes of the non-conceptual awakened state that give relief, but they're just flashes. The temptation is thus to take easy path of distraction. Yeah, any thoughts on this? Yeah, we all do that. That's the thought on that. Everybody in this gang here does that every day. And it's not, I think, for me personally, a sort of strict, moralistic take doesn't work. You have to have discipline that has a light touch to it and an attraction to that state. Because you said, I've had flashes of this kind of quality of being awake and present, which is what we all have. And that's why if anybody talks or teaches about it, we go, oh, I know what they're talking about. Otherwise it'd be like, what I have is wall-to-wall thinking, and the rest of it's, and when you have, I know people who believe that's what the mind is, and so this kind of conversation is not going to happen. I would just enter the wall-to-wall thinking world and just try to be kind, have a good chat about something that has a positive kind of feeling to it, or a helpful feeling. But for the yogis in the crowd, obviously we get glimpses of the awakened mind, and that's exactly how it occurs. And we work with those, like in meditation practice, as a little ember or a spark. And in a way, the meditation practice is going, because you recognize it, and you practice not filling it so fast, abiding, residing. But we all know you can't dwell on it or fixate on it, because then it just becomes another thought, as in Sharon's comments. So my thought on it is, if you're attracted to it in any way, to begin to cultivate a relationship with it in a more organized and disciplined way, and recognize that some part of that process will be cutting through habits, and that when you cut through habits, there's a certain amount of resistance that comes up and says, no, I don't want to. I'd rather have chocolate ice cream. I'd rather go to the movies. So what does that translate to? Daily practice of even 10 or 20 minutes, allowing time and space for more intense practice, giving it some cred, giving it some value, and then recognizing that we are going against the flow. There's not much in the society that's going to support it, and there's not much in most of our families that's going to support that activity. And even in our own personal evaluation, we might go, I don't know. So if we have to recognize the value and also be drawn towards it. So one of the ways that works in the Buddhist tradition is people are drawn to somebody who has been drawn to it already themselves and is sort of has more strong and stable relationship to that, such as a teacher. I would say of all the students of Trungpa Rinpoche, the attraction to him was the same as the attraction to the awakened state of mind that they themselves experienced. It's no different. But when it's embodied, it's certainly easier to kind of remember that it has value and that it's possible. So we have time for a few more. I hope that's helpful what I said. I'm not sure, but I hope so. Hi, Marie. I know you're out there. My wish, by the way, is someday we get to do this non-virtual. So I just do want to say there's some live non-virtual sessions coming up that I hope some of you can come to. And, Seth just sent out an email, and they're on the website. There's a schedule of my events at davidnickturn.com. If you can go to the schedule there. But in particular, the weekend after this one, after this coming one, September 25th to 27th, in New York, if you're anywhere in New York, at the New York Shambhala Center, a level 1 Shambhala training, which if you've been dabbling with this stuff, I highly recommend as a way of digging in, getting a good weekend of practice and studying. And I'll be co-teaching that with my son Ethan, who most of you know, or some of you know. And then, the weekend after that, up at Kripalu, Taming the Mind workshop. Then I'm having a workshop with just the students I've been working with one-to-one. And I want to tell you all that that's possible too. I've had a very kind of rich several years of working with people one-to-one, which we can do via Skype. There's a whole separate deal on that, so we can talk about it if you're interested. But I'm trying to have a yearly gathering of those students to just sort of keep progressing. I noticed over time that there's a tendency for some people to stick their toe in, take their toe out, stick the toe in, take the toe out. For all of us, So some kind of container where you can feel you are going to develop your practice in an ongoing way becomes important at a certain point. So let's see what else we got here. Maybe we have time for a couple more. Oops, there it goes. Okay. Casey Luber. Casey, if you come to New York, you have to call me and have a cup of coffee, okay? Casey does all the video for Yoga Journal conferences. You may have seen her at those, and also the festivals and things. And she's a great person and fun. Okay, let's see. Yeah, Scott, would the concept of Dwala go along with synchronicity? Totally, Scott. And maybe we could talk about that on the retreat, because many people may not know Dwala, and we've talked about it some, but it is completely connected with that idea of sort of connecting with the magic of the phenomenal world, the environment. Absolutely. Laurel is saying, I agree with you, David, about 2012. Lots of stuff happened with me. A lot of it was very uncomfortable, but coming out of that is a deeper sense of calmness and simplicity, less worry. I feel like I'm in a good place now on the path. Well, that's great. Sharon, I still think we create the storyline, reading into things that are there, or creating the storyline in hindsight. Yeah, the storyline is created, Sharon. That's, of course. Like my friend who thinks everything that falls in her path is speaking to her in some magical, special way. Yeah. If it's storyline, we create it. Period. Who else would create it? Julia, I was talking with a teacher a few months ago about making some decisions, and she referred to something Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche was known to say. Follow the coincidences. It's cool to contemplate that. Yeah, that's what we're doing. And you know, I'm not trying to say there's one or a different way to go at this, but it is part of our experience, so it's interesting to look at it. And all we're saying today is it's a natural part of the experience of, and that when you synchronize mind and body, you might have a heightened sense of that. But there's, you know, it's, as Sharon's saying, it's not so much a question of making a big story out of that either. You just got to kind of go along with it. Monica, sometimes I feel like when you just totally give up, finally, let go of hopeful outcome, then the synchronicity comes. Does anyone else have this experience? Well, other people could chip in, but I think that I would agree with that personally. But we got, you know, that's when we were talking about hope from that point of view. This is kind of letting go of attachment to future outcome is what we meant by the proper relationship to hopelessness. Not that you should feel depressed, just not grasping. Susan, very helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. Good to have you. Okay, Sharon, last shot here. For example, once David and I, not me, but her David, and I were hiking in the middle of nowhere. At the time we were thinking of buying a house, and there next to the waterfall in the wilderness was a tiny charm, and we looked at it carefully, and it was a house. We found that magical until we brought it home and looked at it carefully and realized it was a doghouse. I think the magic is still happening there. Okay. Though perhaps we could see the word dog that was on it as God, spelled backwards. Sweet. I think that might be a good note to end on from the, in terms of, you know, questions and so forth. So we will be on next week as per usual. If you guys have any topics or ideas, please send them across to me. You can always write to me at davidnickturn@gmail.com. And I hope I get to see some of you live sometime soon. I know some of you are from pretty far away. But everybody comes to New York, let's face it, you know, at some point or another. So let's keep in mind the simplicity and the ordinariness of what we're talking about, that we use the phrase ordinary magic, you know. We're not trying to create some big drama here. We have enough of that already. But there is a sparkling quality to the world we live in when we're paying attention to it. And it's not just all about getting what we want. That's the ground of that. So please have a good week. If you're interested in this kind of material, my strong recommendation is to do some sitting practice and get some help with that, community, some good teachings. Stabilize it. It's hard. It's very hard to find that route in this time and place, but people are doing it. And so, you know, try to do some sitting practice. And thank you all so much for joining in. And as you know, these talks are all archived, so we'll post a little later. If you missed part of it, you can see it, or any of the earlier ones coming up. So for now, we return control of your television sets to you.